A trained AI could do this job. Troy said it loud enough for the whole conference room to hear. 16 people, 4 interns, complete silence. I'm Neil Hutchins, 52 years old, and I'd been running Sentinel Defense Systems IT infrastructure for 20 years, 2 decades. And this kid from Silicon Valley, 3 months on the job, just told everyone I was replaceable by a machine. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I was halfway through explaining the new Aegis protocol patch cycle when Troy Ashford, the fresh-faced VP they'd hired from some startup, raised his hand and cut me off mid-sentence. He gave this little smirk, the kind that says he's already made up his mind before you even finish talking. You could hear the HVAC humming through the vents. I'd been running this place for 20 years, first one in every morning. The guy who kept the lights on through 2 vendor collapses and saved our ass during the 2020 Russian cyber attack that nearly cost us a $180 million defense contract. My hands had built the bones of that system. I bled for that place. Claire Donovan's nails clicked nervously against her coffee mug. Art Pierce from finance looked up with this stunned expression, like someone had just told him his dog died. The interns didn't say a word, just stared at their screens like maybe if they didn't move, they wouldn't get dragged into whatever this was. I didn't say anything, didn't flinch, just pushed my chair back slow, letting the metal legs drag across the tile with that long, angry screech that filled the whole conference room. Reached into my wallet, pulled out my badge, and slid it across the table right at Troy. He blinked but didn't react, just turned to one of the interns, maybe 24, still had the new laptop smell on him, and said, "Brandon, let's get you ramped up on Neil's workflows. Should be straightforward." Straightforward. I walked out without a word, past the front desk, past the hallway where we used to tape up birthday cards and quarterly wins, out into the hot September sun. Sat in my old Subaru. Still had the cracked dashboard and the picture of Sarah tucked in the visor. Been 3 years since she passed. Cancer took her fast, and after that, work was all I had. This place became everything. Guess that was the problem. I checked my phone. 6 messages, all from my team. Claire. What just happened? Art. Dude, are you okay? Jenna. Did you seriously just quit? I didn't answer. Just sat there in the heat. No AC, no music. Let the sun cook me through the windshield while I waited for something I couldn't name. Then I drove home, parked behind the fence like always, and walked inside without turning on a single light. Grabbed the bottle of Jameson from the cabinet above the fridge, poured 2 fingers into the nearest clean glass, and sat down at my personal rig. The one they didn't know existed. Dual tower, cold-synced drives, dark mode terminals glowing blue in the darkroom. No Slack, no Zoom, no corporate spyware on this machine, just clean, raw tools and every undocumented fix I'd written since 2005. I booted up the archive manager. Vaulted folders blinked to life. Compliance configs from 3 vendor stacks ago. Notes from the 2020 attack, the same one they barely survived because I spent 2 nights sleeping on the server room floor, fixing broken chain signatures while legal ran around like their heads were on fire. Started exporting the logs, encrypting configs, copying over the code that only made sense to me. No comments, no documentation, just raw logic. The system was ugly as hell, but it worked. Always had. Held together like duct tape on a collapsing bridge. But I knew where every weak beam was. I built them. Around 7:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. Voicemail from some HR woman with a fake warm voice like she was reading from a script. "Hi Neil, this is Patricia Morgan from corporate. Mr. Malone wants to know what happened today. Can you please give us a call back as soon as possible?" Didn't bother listening to the rest. Malone knew exactly what happened. Patricia was just the middleman. HR trying to paper cut their way through a bomb blast. I kept working. No panic, no rush. I wasn't angry. Not even a little. I was calm, sharp, like a soldier cleaning his rifle after getting discharged. Not out of hate, just because it's what you do when something ends. At 4:03 p.m., I ran a dry checksum on the Aegis protocol tree. Everything intact, tokens still live, backup custodian undefined, exactly as I'd left it. No one else had noticed. Not yet. 96 hours. That's how long it had before entering full compliance lockdown. Per protocol CP19, line 72, the one I wrote. They'd never read it, never even opened the damn policy. But I had. Every word. At 5 p.m. on the dot, I logged into the admin console and stared at the terminal. Custodian Iron Gate. Status: active. Last signature: September 19th, 4:17 p.m. That name, Iron Gate, was my root admin. Nobody else knew it. Not even the CTO. No notes, no paper trail. All clearance updates were biometric, tied to my retina and my keystroke cadence. Military-grade paranoid. I pulled the physical keycard back up from my desk drawer. The one they didn't know existed. Small thing, about the size of a credit card, with a magnetic strip and my thumbprint encoded. I held it up to my webcam, snapped a photo with timestamp visible, then bent it in half until it cracked. Clean break. Uploaded the photo to an encrypted archive with a 48-hour delay release to my personal cloud. Then I hovered over the command bar and typed it slow. Revoke admin custodian, Iron Gate. The cursor blinked 3 times. I stared at it for maybe 30 seconds, not because I wasn't sure, because I wanted to remember this moment. Then the confirmation prompt popped up. Are you sure? This action cannot be undone. I didn't even blink. Clicked yes. The terminal went dark for a second, then flashed red. Custodian role revoked. No replacement defined. Aegis protocol enters passive compliance hold in 96 hours. Clock started ticking. That was it. No fireworks, no alarm bells, just a soft hum from the tower fan and a blinking terminal. I leaned back, took a sip of my drink, and watched the countdown begin. That system had protected them for a decade, and now it was protecting itself from them. Monday morning came quiet. I was up early, made coffee, and sat on the back deck with my laptop open. Front row seat to the slow unraveling. No emails from corporate, no missed calls, nothing. Which told me one thing. Troy still thought everything was under control. Around 8:15 a.m., I remote viewed the internal message board through a backdoor I'd kept for diagnostics. First post from Troy. Team, Jenna and Brandon will be dividing up Neil's workflows. Let's stay focused and keep pushing forward. I took a sip of coffee and watched. Jenna Wallace logged into the compliance terminal first. She'd always been quick, sharp. I'd trained her myself for 6 years, taught her everything I could. But not Aegis. That was mine. It took maybe 20 seconds before the first error hit her screen. Token expired. Custodian undefined. She tried again. Same error. Brandon Ellis leaned over her desk, reading it like it was in another language. He opened a browser and typed it into Google, like some Reddit post was going to explain what a federal compliance custodian is. Spoiler, it wasn't. They flagged Troy. I could imagine it. Jenna waving him over, trying to stay professional while her stomach was probably doing flips. Troy barely looked, just waved his hand and said something like, "Ignore that." Probably legacy noise from Neil's old configs. By 9:40 a.m., Jenna had emailed Mark, the CTO, asking for help escalating access. She CC'd legal. That was smart. She knew something felt off. At 10:17 a.m., I watched the audit sync start to fail in real time. Registry handshake rejected, custodian signature missing, Aegis protocol status, passive hold. Federal registry syncs every 72 hours. That means the last clean connection was Friday afternoon, right before I walked. By 11 a.m., legal pinged Mark directly. Jenna was slamming through help desk tickets. Brandon had 3 Stack Overflow tabs open, trying to figure out what a signature chain even meant. The team chat went quiet. You could smell the panic through the screen. Troy, though? Still smiling. Still coasting on startup buzzwords and whatever worked in San Diego. He walked into the dev pit that morning like he was announcing a TED Talk. Said something like, "We're going to streamline ops, modernize legacy flows, maybe even shift toward open architecture," Jenna asked again. More directly this time. "Who's the current Aegis custodian?" Troy blinked. "No one, I guess. It's just an admin role, right?" I nearly choked on my coffee. At 11:42 a.m., Mark pushed a test file through the sync queue. It failed hard. 3 errors stacked. Token mismatch, custodian undefined, signature chain broken. That wasn't just a flag, that was a red light and siren. Legal emailed, again. Subject line, urgent compliance access failure. Escalation required. And Troy, still calling it a temporary bug. They didn't get it yet. thought they were still in control, thought they could debug their way out with half-baked patchwork and team huddles. But Aegis wasn't a bug. It was a countdown. The moment I pulled that trigger, the clock started ticking. 96 hours before the system locked itself down for federal review, and they were already 16 hours in. By Tuesday morning, the warning signs weren't just blinking, they were screaming. First email came in at 6:57 a.m. from an automated vendor system. Procurement transaction failed. Compliance token validation error. Then another. Then a third. By 8 o'clock a.m., even the cleaning crew could tell something was off. Half the office lights didn't auto-activate because the smart grid config was still tied to Aegis. That's how deep it went. Even the lights knew I was gone. Jenna tried sending out the daily compliance logs, bounce backs, every email flagged, custodian signature mismatch, transmission blocked. Brandon attempted a manual override, terminal spit out the same line over and over, override rejected, no active custodian. At 9:11 a.m., Art from finance texted me, "Hey man, did you booby-trap the system?" That one made me laugh out loud. First time in days. At 9:22 a.m., Rachel Hoffman, Legal's junior analyst, hit me on Signal. She was the only one smart enough to use something untraceable. We're in trouble. It won't let anyone in. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. The system was doing exactly what it was designed to do when handled improperly. Seal itself, refuse entry, force legal review. Nothing malicious. Just protocol. By 10 o'clock a.m., CTO Mark sent a full trace report to Malone's office. Error logs stacked back to Friday. Aegis was in protective mode. Not failed, not crashed, just sealed. Jenna sent a message to the whole ops channel. If anyone knows how to reauthorize Aegis access, speak up now. No one did. Brandon was quiet by then. Probably too deep in some API documentation rabbit hole to be useful. At 1:37 p.m., they called in an outside vendor. A third-party contractor who used to work on the Aegis install back in 2015. The guy charged $900 an hour just to tell them the truth. This system requires a live custodian signature. Without it, there is no system. By 3 o'clock p.m., Legal was in full-blown escalation mode. Every open contract was now technically non-compliant. Every procurement order dead on arrival. They couldn't file for new grants. Couldn't renew existing certifications, couldn't even send a federal invoice without that signature chain. Around 3:45 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code, Northern Virginia. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back. Hutch, it's Rick Donovan. I hadn't heard that voice in 2 years. We served together back in the 90s before I went civilian. He ran security for Lockheed now. "Heard you nuked Sentinel," he said. His voice had that edge to it, half amusement, half respect. Words already traveling through the defense circuit. Someone at DoD leaked it to a contractor meeting this morning. They're calling it a custodian failure, but we both know that's bullshit. You didn't fail, you walked, and you took the keys with you. He paused. I could hear him light a cigarette. You didn't burn bridges, brother. You burned the whole goddamn city. Respect. Call me if you need anything, or don't. Either way, you just became a legend. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone for a minute. Then I deleted the voicemail and went back to my coffee. Meanwhile, I took a walk. Left my phone at home, grabbed a sandwich from Tommy Barone's deli on the corner, nodded at the old man behind the counter, came back around 5 o'clock p.m. Opened my laptop, checked my inbox. 52 new messages from various corners of Sentinel. LinkedIn had 14 connection requests. 3 recruiter emails with subject lines like immediate opening, 400K base and senior architect role, your experience needed. Didn't read a single one. I opened a new draft. Addressed it to Anthony Russo, Office of Federal Compliance Operations. He was a contact from the 2020 attack. Knew me, respected my work. Subject, custodian role vacated. Sentinel Defense Systems. Body was clean. No rant, no drama, just the facts. As of 5 o'clock p.m. on September 19, 2025, the role of Federal Compliance Custodian, Aegis Protocol ID Irongate, was formally revoked. No replacement was authorized. Attached is the official signature timestamp, digitally signed and confirmed. Per CP19 protocol, Aegis has entered automatic passive hold pending federal review. I attached the file, checked the hash, and pressed send at 6:23 p.m. That was it. The system's fate wasn't in their hands anymore. It was in Washington's. From this point on, Troy wasn't arguing with me. He was arguing with the federal government, and that was a fight he'd already lost. Wednesday morning, the building felt like it was holding its breath. The hum of normal was gone. No usual keyboard clatter, no hallway chatter, just red blinking status lights and a slow crawl of fear seeping into every floor. The compliance errors weren't occasional anymore. They were everywhere. Terminals pinged failure messages every 5 minutes. The big wall display in ops, the one that used to show audit health, was now lit up like a Christmas tree from hell. Troy walked around saying it was residual noise from deprecated processes. He actually used that phrase, out loud, multiple times. Jenna looked like she hadn't slept. She'd been pulling 12-hour days trying to sort through logs she didn't even understand. 2 laptops open, 3 notepads scattered across her desk, and a half-eaten protein bar sitting untouched since Monday. Brandon was still deep in Stack Overflow, copying random commands into the terminal, hoping one would crack open Aegis like a piñata. At 9:34 a.m., Mark, the CTO, stormed into Troy's office with a printed trace report in his hand, not a digital copy, printed, like he needed the weight of it. He slammed it down on Troy's desk. "You see this?" Troy barely glanced. "I'm aware of the issue. It's being addressed." Mark didn't blink. "No, it's not. Every single audit sync has been rejected since Friday afternoon. We are in active breach. Not pending, not delayed. Breached." Troy tried to pivot. "We're modernizing, Mark. Legacy handoffs like Neil's were never properly transitioned." "Because you fired him before you asked what he did," Mark said, voice sharp and low. "You didn't even look at the protocol logs." Troy stood, trying to look in control. "We can reset tokens, reissue admin chains." Mark shook his head. "You don't get it. He just doesn't care about your title. It needs a custodian's signature, and his was the only one coded to federal standard." Troy sat back down like the wind had been knocked out of him. Jenna poked her head in from the hallway. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Legal says Patricia's offboarding paperwork flagged the custodian handoff as pending, but no transfer was ever completed." That hit hard. Patricia had handled compliance onboarding before she left. She'd pinged me about a replacement custodian role back in August. I told her it needed a signature handoff and biometric match. She said she'd escalate it after the new fiscal year. She never got the chance. Now, no Patricia, no custodian, no federal compliance. They were exposed, totally, at the federal level. Troy mumbled something about reaching out to the software vendor for override credentials. Mark actually laughed, dark and humorless. "They'll tell you what they told us in 2020. No override exists. That's the point." The room went dead silent. From the hallway, someone dropped a coffee mug. It shattered across the tile like a gunshot. No one moved. Everyone in that building, from the junior developers to the senior lawyers, felt it. They weren't in trouble. They were done. I spent Wednesday afternoon on my porch. Didn't check email. Didn't look at LinkedIn. Just sat there with a book I wasn't really reading and coffee I barely tasted. Sarah's photo was still in the Subaru, tucked in that visor. 20 years I'd told myself I was building something that mattered. Missed her last birthday because some vendor config crashed at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. Told her I'd make it up to her. Never got the chance. And now here I was. No wife, no job, nothing but time I should have spent differently. The sun moved across the deck. I didn't move with it. Around 4:30 p.m. my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look, but something made me check. Voicemail. 2 minutes, 47 seconds long. I played it. "Neil, it's Walter Briggs." I sat up straight. Walter founded Sentinel back in 1983. Built it from his garage into a $400 million operation. Retired 6 months ago, moved down to Florida. I hadn't heard his voice since his goodbye party. I'm calling from Boca and, hell, I don't even know where to start. I heard what happened. What Troy did. The board just had an emergency meeting. We're looking at $380 million in frozen contracts. Federal breach, the whole thing. He paused. I could hear him take a breath. "Troy's done. They're voting him out tomorrow morning. I'm flying back up Thursday. Listen, I built that company for 40 years. 40 years, Neil. And the biggest mistake I made was not fighting harder for you before I left. I knew the new leadership was going to make changes. I knew they didn't understand what we'd built. But I was tired. I wanted out, and I let them push you aside." His voice got quieter. "You were the foundation. The goddamn foundation. I should have protected that. I should have protected you. If you want to come back, name your price. Any title you want. CTO, Chief Security Officer, whatever you want to call it. Fire anyone you want, and I mean anyone, including the people who hired Troy. Bring Jenna back if they pushed her out. Build it the way it should have been built from the start. Just, please call me back. We need you. I need you to know I'm sorry. The voicemail ended. I sat there staring at my phone. The sun was starting to set, orange light cutting across the yard. Walter Briggs, the man who gave me my first real shot back in 2005, who trusted me with the 2020 crisis when everyone else wanted to panic, who shook my hand at his retirement party and told me I was the best hire he ever made, and now he was apologizing. I set the phone down on the table, face up this time, watched the screen go dark. Part of me wanted to call him back, wanted to fix what they'd broken, wanted to walk back into that building and prove Troy was wrong about everything. But another part of me, the part that had been sleeping on server room floors for 20 years, the part that missed Sarah's last birthday, the part that built systems for people who called me replaceable, that part was tired. I picked up my book, turned the page. The light was fading, but I could still read. Tomorrow was Thursday. 96 hours would be up at 5 o'clock p.m. The system would lock, Sentinel would be in full federal breach, and they'd all be staring at screens that wouldn't let them in. Walter would be flying in, Troy would be packing his desk, the board would be scrambling, and me, I'd be right here, reading. The phone buzzed again, text message this time, then another, then 3 more in quick succession. I turned the phone face down and went back to my book. They'd figure it out. Or they wouldn't. Either way, I was finished. Thursday morning, 10 minutes before the big ops meeting, Richard Malone kicked the door open like he owned the building, which, technically, he did. He stormed in holding a fat blue folder, face red, tie loose, hair half-combed. That folder had weight to it. You could feel it before he even dropped it. "Where's Neil?" he barked. The room froze. Everyone looked at Troy. Troy cleared his throat, trying to stand like it was just another normal Thursday. Neil was part of the restructure, sir. Malone didn't flinch. He slammed the folder down on the table with a thud that echoed off the glass walls. "You just killed our ability to operate." No one breathed. He flipped the folder open. Inside were printed contracts, red-stamped government seals, flag status sheets. The kind of paperwork that ends careers. 380 million in federal contracts, Malone snapped. Gone. All red-flagged. Aegis is legally unmanned. "And you let it happen?" Troy fumbled. His voice cracked slightly. "We weren't fully briefed on the scope of—" "You didn't ask!" Malone roared, slamming his palm on the table so hard Jenna jumped in her seat. He was the keystone, the one person holding up the entire compliance infrastructure. And you told him a trained AI could do his job. Art whispered something under his breath. Might have been a prayer. Jenna dropped her coffee, didn't even notice it spilled, just sat there staring at the table. The room went totally silent except for the slow drip of coffee pooling on the tile. Troy tried to pull something out. "We thought it was just an admin role. It looked redundant on paper. There was no updated documentation showing—" "Because he was the documentation," Malone barked, pointing toward my empty chair at the end of the table. "You fired the person who held our federal clearance key and didn't even bother asking what it meant. Didn't ask what he did. Didn't ask who could replace him. You just assumed some 24-year-old kid fresh out of college could learn in 3 days what took 20 years to build." Brandon looked like he was about to throw up. The other interns had their heads down, trying to disappear into their laptops. Malone didn't sit. He didn't lower his voice. He paced the length of the table like a general in the middle of a court-martial. Everyone sat there like school kids who knew they were dead. "You modernized your way straight into a federal compliance breach," he said. "Do you understand what that means? Payroll's frozen. We can't cut checks. Procurement's frozen. We can't order a goddamn pencil without Aegis clearance. We can't move a cent through a federal contract without that system online. And it's not coming back online. Not without him." Troy said nothing, just stood there looking smaller by the second. "Aegis didn't crash," Malone went on, voice lower now but sharper. Meaner. "It followed protocol. The exact protocol Neil Hutchins wrote enforced and maintained without a single failure for 20 years. Not one failure, not one breach, not one audit flag. 20 years of perfect compliance. And you torched it in 3 months. Troy looked like he wanted to melt into the wall. Malone stared at him for a full 5 seconds. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then he picked up the folder, closed it slowly, and said one final thing. Quiet. Almost a growl. You didn't lose an engineer. You lost the institution, the foundation, the one guy who never needed credit, never played politics, never asked for anything except working systems and a locked door. And when he asked for respect, you handed him a pink slip and a 24-year-old replacement. He turned and walked out. Not another word. No eye contact. Just out the door, folder under his arm, anger radiating off him like heat. Nobody moved. You could feel it in that room. Everyone in that building knew they were finished. Thursday, exactly 5:00 p.m., Aegis Protocol's 96-hour window slammed shut, right on schedule. Every monitor in the building blinked red. Custodian role vacated. All systems suspended. No active custodian. Access denied. Federal transactions froze. Payroll halted. Procurement uploads failed. Compliance access rejected every login attempt. Email systems flagged. Vendor portals locked. Even the automated door access started throwing errors. No bypass, no override, no way in. Just one brutal message flashing across 450 screens. Access denied. Jenna was the first to scream, not loudly. Just this panicked, frustrated yelp like something inside her snapped. Like she'd been holding it together for 96 hours and finally couldn't anymore. Art walked out of his office with both hands on his head. We can't process payroll. We can't pay anyone. Not vendors, not employees, not contractors. Nothing. Brandon was pale, staring at the server board like it might physically catch fire. One of the other interns was crying quietly at her desk. The PR team tried to get ahead of it, started typing up some weak memo about scheduled system maintenance and temporary service interruptions. They posted it internally and on the company site within 20 minutes. No one bought it. The industry news sites had it within an hour. Sentinel Defense Systems experiencing major compliance system failure. By 6:00 p.m., it was on Bloomberg. By 7:00 p.m., 3 competitors had reached out to Sentinel's clients offering contingency services. Legal was already on the phone with federal regulators. Finance was drafting loss projections and cash flow scenarios. HR was fielding questions from 450 employees who wanted to know if they'd get paid next week. The answer was no. Not until Aegis came back online. And Aegis wasn't coming back. I wasn't there for any of it. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of black coffee, reading a paperback copy of Shogun. Sun was out, light breeze. I hadn't turned on the news. Didn't need to. I knew exactly what was happening. Around 5:12 p.m., my phone started buzzing. Didn't stop for 20 minutes. Troy, please, just tell me how to stop this. Mark, Neil, I know you're angry, but we need to talk. People are going to lose their jobs. Jenna, I'm so sorry. For everything. Please. Unknown numbers, voicemails piling up, text after text after text. I stared at the screen. It wasn't anger I felt, or satisfaction, just clarity. It was over. Simple as that. There was no system left to stop. Aegis was in full lockdown. Protocol CP-19 was in control now. Not me, not them, not Troy or Mark or even Malone. No way back without federal clearance and a biometric match from someone who no longer worked there. Someone who'd had his badge revoked. Someone who'd been told a machine could do his job better. They'd nuked the one person who could have saved them. Not out of strategy or planning. Just arrogance. Just the belief that 20 years of institutional knowledge could be replaced by 3 months of buzzwords and a kid with a computer science degree, and now they were dying right there at their desks. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at the count. 68 unread messages now. Offers, apologies, threats disguised as legal warnings. Walter's voicemail from yesterday, still sitting there unplayed a second time. All the things they should have given me when I was there. All the respect they should have shown before they decided I was replaceable. I powered the phone off completely. They wanted me to fix it, to come back and save them, to prove that I was better than the AI Troy said could replace me, to show them I was the only one who could stop the bleeding. But I'd spent 20 years fixing their problems, covering their mistakes, sleeping on server room floors while they slept in their beds, missing my wife's last birthday because a vendor system crashed and they needed me right now, Neil. This is critical. Everything was always critical. Until I wasn't. I was done fixing things for people who didn't value the fix. I picked up my book, found my page, the sun was warm on my face, the coffee was still hot, and for the first time in 20 years, I had nowhere I needed to be. No emergency to solve, no system to save, no one demanding my time. Just me, a book, and the sound of the wind moving through the trees. Sarah's picture was still in that Subaru, still tucked in the visor where I could see it every morning. For 3 years, I'd been telling myself I was honoring her memory by working harder, by being indispensable, by making sure her sacrifice meant something. But she didn't want me to be indispensable. She wanted me to be present, and I'd chosen the server room over her. Every single time. I couldn't fix that, couldn't bring her back, couldn't undo those choices. But I could stop making them. The phone stayed off. The messages stayed unread. Walter's voicemail stayed unanswered. Tomorrow, Sentinel would still be in breach. The feds would still be investigating. Troy would probably be cleaning out his desk. The board would be in crisis mode. And 450 people would be wondering if they still had jobs. And I'd still be here, on this porch, with this book, with this coffee, living the life I should have been living all along. They'd figure it out, or they wouldn't. Either way, I was finished.